Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Marcia Miller with me. Marcia, welcome.
Hi, it's so great to be here.
I'm delighted to have you back because we are going to talk about preparing for college so that it doesn't feel like we're preparing for college. So, um, and we'll get into what we mean by that. But before we do that, tell the good people a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Great. I have a very varied resume, which has given me wonderful skill sets and experiences in working and collaborating with lots of different kinds of people, from corporations to law firms. And then my last 14 years was at a private school, and where I really worked and high focused my skills with ADHD, and working with high school students, and executive function skills, and giving them a place where it was a more relaxed place for them to see their strengths, grow into who they were, but also really highlighting what they needed to learn about themselves as a learner. And my joy of doing that today as an executive function coach is the same, of understanding ADHD. You don't have to have ADHD to understand the perils of being a teenager, and how your brain changes as the frontal lobe is kind of rewiring constantly. And so the executive function part of learning how to do academic world will bring you to the work world beautifully. And I think in today's world, you're seeing it over and over again, how many people are talking about the fact that we don't have good collaboration skills.
Mm,
And I think incorporating collaboration skills early on in that, thinking about how do I prepare my student for the next steps. And I mean, this can be from elementary school, where you're not mentioning we're doing this because of college, young child, but instead that these are the skill sets you want to see your young child grow into as a young adult and an adult. And collaboration is huge.
yeah.
And it's not just how to be quiet when someone you disagree with talks, but really how to use that yes and from improv, right? How to really buy into that whole thing. So that's where I am today. I am an executive function coach. I am a college, how to do college workshop presenter. I work with parents, and I'm still kind of in that admissions role too, that I can help with schools that want a little more adjustment with their admissions world. So I'm a little of everything, as I
Yeah.
always have.
Yeah, and it's fun to talk to people who are a little bit of everything because we know a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, before we go too much further, let's talk about ADHD and executive function. If you listen to this podcast at all, and if it's your first time, then we'll do a quick recap. But executive function skills are what, Marcia?
Okay, so it is initiation, organization, planning, all that kind of the old-fashioned secretary in the brain. It is the teacher that says, we're doing this project, it's coming up, it's due in 2 weeks. See me if you have any questions. Meanwhile, they've talked about in the elementary school years that it needs to be in a purple folder with your name on the far upper right corner. It has to be 3 pages. It has to have this and this. You hear it as a child, you want to do it as a child, but if you don't have that old-fashioned secretary in your brain, it's poof gone. And the question, when you say, see me if you have any questions, the first question is, wait, what again? And that's not necessarily ADHD, but that is usually how an ADHD brain works, right? And so you don't have to have and ADHD comes up much later in life also, right? So the ADHD brain is executive function compounded with um, a and there's so many different markers within that world, but it is kind of more like the lack of being able to, the lack of the dopamine that allows you to stay focused on one thing that you don't have an interest in,
Yeah.
right? And so the ADHD, especially the inattentive, has a real hard time focusing any motivation towards something that they don't have an interest in, but have a huge amount of dopamine for the things they do have an interest in. And every parent will always say that my kid can spend hours doing XYZ, can't get them to spend 2 minutes doing something else.
Yeah.
And so those are different things. Executive function wiring is going to fix itself by the age of 26, 28. That's just the frontal lobe finishing its wiring. Some kids are blessed with an early level of being able to do all that executive function, but maybe the rest of their frontal lobe isn't as developed yet, but that's not showing up in the school.
Mhm.
For the kids who don't have the executive function wiring in the school years, it's hard. And I, as a layman, will say that's where anxiety starts to kick in, because you don't know why school's not working anymore. You just know it's not working anymore. You're getting bad grades because you forgot a deadline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you forgot that I had to be in the purple envelope. Purple folder.
Okay. So we have this, I love this. We have this old-fashioned secretary. I can picture her in the brain that is very organized, has everything typed up, color-coded, knows where things are, knows when it should be due. And for some people, that secretary is either very, very quiet, a little bit disorganized, or not at all present.
Yes.
Okay. And so, and let me just be clear. In children younger than like about 5, we're not actually expecting any kind of secretary to be present. Right. So these are skills. And again, you said so, 26, 30 years old. These are skills that are developing over the entire course of a life up until adulthood.
Right.
Okay. Having said that, though, regardless of the state of the secretary, what are some things that, as we're thinking about, okay, what are the skills that somebody needs in order to go to college? First of all, let me stop there. What are the skills that somebody needs in order to be successful at college? And therefore, the way you're telling it, I think, at work. So talk about this collaboration piece. Talk about the skills that we need here.
Yes. And so unfortunately for the person who doesn't have the executive function wiring yet, they have to have external strategies in place daily to help them with initiation, organization, and planning ahead, and staying on top of deadlines, and being reliable. And I often say to my high schoolers, I'm like, reliability is about the most unsexy word out there, but it is probably the most essential skill out there in relationships too, right? And so to be reliable, you have to be able to do all those things. Now, the beauty of an iPhone and different things is you can put in place is to do those outside strategies. And you have to do them until one day that clicks. Those skills take you from through the academic world in college. The professors need you to hand something in on deadline, and following the rules and rubrics that they've sent out, right? So in college, then you also have to figure out how to learn from different professors, how they've written that out in their syllabus, have they identified what they really want? Do you get what they really want? Do you have enough knowledge inside that you don't know what they really want, right? And the strategies of how to find those. And again, you can have a boss where you're not sure you're quite landing it. Do you know that? Can you feel that inside of you? I'm not quite sure I know exactly what's expected of me. How do I use those skills and strategies to get to that point, right? And so all of that is based on so much earlier on in your life of knowing that even when you do get something easily, that there are strategies you're putting in place.
Oh my gosh, this makes me think of, okay, just sidebar real quick. My son was in 2nd grade. He was being asked to show his work on a math problem. And this kid was math came super easily to him. And so he would look at the math problem, and know the answer immediately. There was no process that he was supposed to, the thing ended up being such a dramatic episode for him because he didn't understand what the question was. Show your work. There is no work. So what I hear you saying is, right. And so we had to sit down with him and say, actually, you are doing a strategy. It's just that the strategy is so intuitive to you that you can't see it.
Right. And it's so fast.
And it's so fast. So this is a little bit the opposite. But the reason I'm telling this kind of random story that just popped into my head is so that you can illustrate, okay, like, how do we do this, right? How do we make the invisible visible? That, because that's essentially what we're doing. Yeah.
I love that. And in your conversation with your son, you were trying to unravel where the hiccup was, right? So you knew, and the teacher knew that he was getting the right answer. And you had to figure out where is the hiccup? What is it that you don't get? And what is it that's not making sense to you? And our brains, as brilliant as they are, do not have that self-analysis. Huh. Do I have ADHD? Do I have executive function issues? Do I not know that I'm already doing those steps, but at incredible speed? And so, and then a lot of times with, I know with ADHD and attentive, if you start to break down those rules, that student will now forget how to do the rest of the problem. So now you're doing like, all right, I can tell you how I got to that. I do this and I do that. And then right. And all of a sudden you're like, your brain has lost interest. And it's just not programmed to be that kind of thinker, but it can do it at a micro speed, right?
Okay, hold on, pause, because a lot of people want to hear this again, and mostly me, which is, and this has happened to me playing the piano, actually. When I know the whole phrase, but if you ask me to slow it down and play it note by note, I will get it wrong every single time. That's essentially what you're alluding to here, right? Which is like, I can do the whole process. Yeah. But if I have to break it up, now the process is like completely broken.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like learning it, look, describing it in a different language. You really are just like, I had it, and then add in any kind of working memory issue, which also usually goes hand in hand with a lot of these kids, is they're like, and like, I had it, I know I did, and now I can't even begin to tell you how I got it. And can't it just be that I got it? Right. And so it's such a frustrating point. And that's where, again, a lot of the dysregulation comes in. And they feel like it's nothing but busy work. When we understand, and they usually do understand why the teacher wants to see the work. Right. They get it, but it's just really hard. And so those are the skill sets that I am talking about today, is that as you teach your student, there's always going to be things that are going to come naturally easy to you. And there's always going to be some things that are going to be hiccups or frustrations. And the person next to you, to your right, has different ones. And the person sitting to your left has different ones. And if you find that everybody has different strengths, you've got a great classroom. And the teacher, I always say, like, the elementary teacher is my favorite teacher, because they get it. They've got 20 little ones that are running around with all these great strengths, and they're just like feeding to those strengths, right? Feeding to those challenges, and they get it. And then all of a sudden, middle school and high school, I always say, it becomes this one size fits all kind of feeling, right, to the student. And I know there's so many brilliant teachers out there that are still doing it, but it's harder. You're going deeper, you're asking for more, and you're asking for the executive function skills. And so when a parent notices that something skids sideways, you have to stop and ask, where's the hiccup? Yeah. Right. And then you've got collaboration going on again, because then the student realizes that the more I say I don't know, the more my brain is digging, and give it that space, that silence of saying, where do you think? What happens to your brain when the teacher says this? Or what happens to your brain when I ask you this? We did the first 2 steps and then you stop. What do you think happened? Right. And all of a sudden you've got that collaborative skill. I don't get it because I forgot. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Let's go with that a little bit more. I mean, maybe that's when you go to that diagnosis from a huge testing. But there's a lot of different things you can do with the experts in the field when that happens, right? It could be dyslexia. It could be dyscalculia. I mean, it could be so many different things. Or it could just be a kid who is in one place where they're not in their wheelhouse. Yeah. Okay. Talk about that a little bit, because part of getting people, humans really, to understand their own brains is what you're talking about here, which is like having repeated, explicit conversations about how brains work. So when you're doing that with a student, like, how does that look for you? Oh, yeah. So it's so individualized, right? I mean, it's going to be, I start with, where are your hiccups? What do you think your hiccups are, right? Because even then, when I was working in the school environment, teachers had their own ideas of where the hiccups were and where their strengths were. But I didn't start with that. I said to the student, what do you think are your hiccups? What frustrates you? What gets you stopped, right? And sometimes it takes a little bit of prodding, some few prompts here and there, but you can get pretty specific very quickly just by allowing that space, that silence, that kindness. of saying everybody's brain is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first thing we can all agree on is everybody's body is different. Everybody knows bodies are different. You've got a football player versus a tennis player versus a non-athlete. That's fine, right? We get it, right? And you can't ask me to take my glasses off and ask me to try harder to look across the room, right? It's not about a matter of trying harder or effort. It's about work. And so all of a sudden, where are your hiccups and how can we work with you? And how can we help you with strategies to help you work through this, right? And that's where that resilience comes from. Did I answer your question? No, I kind of feel like I went off.
Yeah. Listen, this is all helpful. It's all just ways of thinking about it. And the thing I wanted to sort of ping pong off of here is when I know that in the school that you were working at, for example, these are kids who were having lots of experiences of failing in this regard. Like they did not have good sort of brain mapping, did not have good understandings of their strengths. And so I want to walk it back a little bit into middle school in terms of, because what we're talking about here is essentially metacognitive skills, right? How do we think about thinking? How do we think about how we think? And these are really, really important conversations and skills to have early, because when kids are in late elementary and middle school, they're still willing to listen to you.
Yeah.
And they don't usually have a ton of experience with failure. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that impacts, how failure impacts receptivity?
Oh, well, yes. But I also wanted to add that in those years, it's not as competitive.
Yeah.
So you're in elementary school, you're not competing with each other to be the smartest or the best of something, because you're still being treated in a collaborative group setting of learning, right? When it gets to middle school and high school, it does become much more competitive. And I do think the competition tends to reduce a lot of the collaborative skills. But I think that the shame of being a smart person but not being able to do the things that school asks of you easily is a hard one to get over. And a lot of our kids in the high school years that are struggling with the failure, and I put those quotation marks around that word, is that they weren't in the right setting, but they were also not being asked to do what they did well, right? And it felt like to them, they were only asked to do the things, or they only reminded of the things they did poorly. So it's hard to walk into that building every day knowing that one more time of 6 classes a day where I'm going to be reminded of what I'm not doing well. Can't wait for this day to start. So I think that just keeps on snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. By the time it's in the high school years, there's so much shame and there's so much feeling of I can't. I would say, across the board, 90% of the kids that I would interview at the school during the admissions process, what's your favorite class? Wide variety. What's your least favorite class? Almost always math. Because in math, there was this yes or no. There was this, how are you going to, like you said, how are you going to show your work? How are you going to do this? No, that's wrong. This is the right answer. And I think that it just getting harder and harder for them to learn.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times in a high school environment, those math teachers are really trying to make it more enjoyable again and putting that why behind it.
Yeah.
And putting that feeling of that you can do it and there's a relevance to it. Right. And so, again, I think I'm wandering off of your topic, but I think that the idea of not feeling like you're good in school is a trauma that continues on for so long until you can really address it. And knowing and really agreeing with the concept that everyone's brains are not only different, but everyone's brains have strengths that just may not be showing up in this moment. Goes back to this book. And the book I'm referencing is Patrick Lencioni's The 6 Types of Working Genius. And it's talking about how in a great team, you can have different people with great skills that are different. And not everyone should be doing the same thing. And not everyone should be doing something that they are really, really not good at. And so, but how often in a work environment that happens? Yeah. You put me in charge of databases and I'm miserable. I can do it. Of course, I'm competent. And I'm professional, but I will be miserable.
Well,
And other people are like, please, please let me do that work.
yeah, but
Don't do it like
school,
you do.
to your point, when we're funneling kids through school, we're expecting them to be
Do
good
everything
at
well.
all the same things in all the same ways. I mean, most school is
Exactly.
predicated on this kind of like, factory mindset, right? Of like, we turn out the good workers. Obviously the kids we talk about on this podcast do not fit that mold, right? So before we wrap here I'm wondering if you can like give the parents like one thing they can do with their late elementary school or middle schooler that helps set this up. And go ahead. And I'm going to jump in with another one if you don't say the one that I want you to say.
Yes. If I go back to this working genius of like the idea of like, what do you think in a family are the best skills to have, and then how to fine tune those back into what you're doing in this coloring project for a poster you're making.
Wow.
And that you constantly remind the hard work of deadline, the hard work of thinking ahead, and rewarding it when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I remember so many times waking my mom up. I've got a project tomorrow and I need poster board, right? And it's 3 a.m. And so rewarding when the kid does come home and say, I've got this project, I don't know what I have to do. I mean, reward that, right? Reward the fact that you let our team know that this is happening. And I think that alone, that collaboration is what you're rewarding. And then as you go along, you're fine-tuning the skill sets of deadlines, organization, thinking ahead, all the different executive function processes that you want that student to have built in by the time they get to middle school, high school, and college.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of conversations, lots of practice opportunities. And the thing that you said before, which I really do want to highlight here, is just lots of conversations about how brains work and how our specific child's brain works and how that's maybe different from some other folks. And what else do they know about themselves? Like that's for me, that's like the big one too, which is just like, can we get to self-understanding? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And self love.
Yes.
That I'm like this. And that I want to work on the other things. If I love myself, I want to work on the other things that help me get along with others better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, if I love myself, I want to work on things that I can, bring to the table that help. And so I think that, and not focusing on grades. I don't mean that. I mean the actual hard work of the skill set.
Yeah.
And if I have a minute, I've got my daughter. I just suspected for the longest time. I didn't know anything about ADHD with my daughter, but I kind of knew things were not working. And she had a friend in I think the middle school, high school years, and that kid was like, "Look, I got diagnosed with ADHD a long time ago, and I know I've got to work 3 times as hard to do the same work that she does, and I know it. I know it about myself." And I thought, wow, that there is a joy to that. There is a dynamic to that can't quit, because that kid always knew that just took the hard work and the strategies to get through it. And then that kid did fine in high school. They did great in college, and they're doing great in life as in their job, because they just accepted it early on, and the family accepted it early on, and they focused on the right skills.
Yeah.
And so that I look back at that and think that is such a great thing that if I knew better, I would have done more with my daughter in younger years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my advice.
I love it. I love it. Marcia Miller, thank you for being here. If people want to learn more about you, what should they do?
Yes. I'll give you my email address.
Yep.
It's marciamiller2627@gmail.com. I'm getting my website up and running soon. But that email address, Marcia, MARCIA, Miller, 2627@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to get back with you. And I can also refer you to other places and people to help with that also.
All right. If you need
Gabrielle, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for being here.
Yes.